Welcome back to episode 142 of the Block Runner Podcast. I'm your host, William, always here with your co-host, Iman.
What's going on?
All right, and on the sticks, we got TJ.
Hey.
And a special guest today, we got Travis. He's the head of product at Quadrata. Welcome, Travis.
Is that how it's pronounced?
Hey, happy to be here.
I've heard Quadrata.
Yes, Quadrata.
Okay, Quadrata.
Quadrata.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I like that name.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you.
I like the other pronunciations, though, getting it out there.
Yeah, Quadrata. Somebody said that. I was like, yeah, maybe that's how it's supposed to be said. But Quadrata is like quadratic, right?
Yeah, it's quadratic. Yeah. So, Travis, thank you for being here. We got a couple of questions. We're inherently interested in the decentralized identity space because of our own project, but we'll get into that a little bit later.
Yeah.
I want to hear personally from you is like, how did you get into the crypto space in the first place? And, how did you get involved in Quadrata to begin with?
Yeah, so my crypto experience goes back to 2013, 2014. So I was relatively early on. At the time, I was working for a biotechnology hardware startup, which was super, super fun and interesting. But that's a whole different story.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a friend of mine who was at Ripple, which, as you know, is one of the early people coming into the space, and they needed a user experience designer, which is what my background is in. So I was talking to her for a long time, trying to get up to speed, learning all about this kind of stuff around summer, fall 2013. Ended up interviewing at the company, loved the stuff they were doing and basically the advantages that they had. I was like, this is going to be a super intellectually stimulating job. Like, it's really early on. Not a lot of other stuff was going on. And I signed on and joined in 2014. And I worked there till late 2016, doing a bunch of different projects, from UX design, moved over to product management, working on Ripple Trade, working on account administration, working with financial institutions, working on compliance, all that fun stuff. And then towards the end of 2016, I left, was doing some consulting stuff on my own. And then kind of avoided the blockchain space for a while because I was working on compliance and identity, which is what I actually really love. As you are probably well aware, 2014 was too early for compliance and identity and blockchain. People were not into it in the space. A lot of the financial institutions we were talking to, very into it, but it was not widespread. And there was also a lot of anti-Ripple sentiment back in the day. So I kind of avoided it for a while and then got intro to Quadrata beginning of last year. And it turned around really quickly. Like, I was like, okay, compliance and identity, this is what we're working on. This is like the right time for it now, 7 years later. So that's what brought me back in. And yeah, I've been super excited to work with them. Everybody's been great. And yeah, I'm loving it.
Travis,
compliance identity is not everybody's favorite niche in blockchain, but it's mine.
Right. No, I totally get it. Give us sort of like a quick overview of what Quadrata is. What's the solution being offered to the marketplace? And how does one leverage the products of Quadrata?
Yeah. So Quadrata basically provides on-chain identity products. So we have started out with looking at things like DID, decentralized identifiers, which are like proof of humanity, making sure that an individual is an individual. So this is a problem across a lot of different spaces. You see it a lot in like metaverse and gaming, that you need to make sure that you don't have bots, but there's also, people are already and companies are linking accounts together on the back end, looking at like chain analysis, stuff like that. But this is how you can actually purposefully link accounts together on the front end as well. If you have multiple passports with the same DID, it's the same person. Country is a really big deal, especially because a lot of projects are avoiding the US. So there's exclusionary things that you can integrate into your smart contract. But there's also inclusionary things. You're like, hey, I really want to offer products to people that are in Brazil or El Salvador. You can target those types of countries specifically. The other one is an AML score. So this is a risk score of anti-money laundering, on a scale of like 1 to 10. 10 is sanctioned entities. You're like, okay, great, don't want to work on that. 1 is like, yeah, this is totally fine. But it allows dApps to actually choose their risk score and what they're doing based on their jurisdiction, their view of blockchain, all that kind of stuff. So we have a published risk matrix that allows them to make those types of decisions. So that's basically what we started out with. And you saw from the previous episode that you did the partnership with Cred Protocol. So that brings an on-chain credit score that allows dApps to be like, okay, if we're doing like uncollateralized lending, under collateralized lending, or even just access to other financial products that require some sort of credit score on chain, that allows them to do that. So we're basically building out these attributes that are all on chain. They're all auditable. You see them when they're happening. So if you're going back in time on previous blocks, all that kind of stuff, you can make sure that everything was like actually accurate, executed correctly, and is out there. So we're looking at adding a ton more data points. The on-chain credit score is just one thing that we're going that direction. But yeah, so we're growing all those types of things. To utilize the Quadrata passport, it's a really simple integration. It's a couple lines of code in your smart contract to check the attribute, set what your thresholds are, what you're looking for, and then you're pretty much ready to go.
So what is being sent to the end user? So say, for example, I'm a metaverse player and I'm accessing a dApp and I have to acquire this decentralized identity. What is being sent to my wallet? Is it an actual NFT? Is it a soulbound token? I mean, what's happening technically?
Yeah, so it's something that's a little bit of variation of the NFT. It's not quite soulbound. It's not quite a simple NFT. So they're not allowed to be transferred. So that's blocked. So you can't onboard, get a passport, send it to somebody else. But it's not soulbound in the sense that it can be burned. So this is one of the things that we're looking at on, security analysis stuff. If your wallet gets compromised, you don't want to have a soulbound identity token attached to that that's going to be attached to your identity for the rest of your blockchain existence,
right?
Which is ideally forever. Right. So we didn't want to have fully soulbound tokens. So being able to burn the passport is a really important feature, both from the user standpoint or from an issuer standpoint. If basically one of the data providers does not stand behind their attributions at some point, they can basically remove their attributions from what's going on as well. So it's not a soulbound, hey, we've minted this exists, this is your identity forever. And that's also true because identities change. Like, people grow over time, they do different things. Somebody can be entirely clean and they can start money laundering, and then that's a thing that needs to be updated over time. So
true.
We're not looking at like the soulbound solution. We're looking at like, how does identity change?
Can an individual only be issued like a passport once in their lifetime, or can, I don't know, for whatever reason, let's say they ruin their reputation on chain over time after like a 4 or 5 year stint of leveraging whatever passport standard that exists? Could I just opt to kind of burn the passport or whatever the identifier is to myself, and maybe reissue a new passport from a different organization or something like that 5 years down the line, kind of like start over my whole identity? Is that possible potentially?
So for the Quadrata passport, that's what our DID, decentralized identifier, does, is so you can't reboot your own identity. If you burn your passport and then try to make a new one, it'll come up with the same DID, which is then linked to different attributes that issuer has also linked to. So you can't be like, oh, I've done some money laundering stuff, let me burn that passport, let me start again. So that DID will continue to be linked to your AML risk score, so stuff like that. There are things right now that are rebootable, as you would say. So like the Cred protocol score is currently tied to an individual wallet. So that's for a particular address that they have. But with the Cred protocol score, how it's actually set up is, if you don't have any history or reputation, it's going to give you a low score, just as in any sort of credit score stuff. So you could reboot, but you'd have to then build, 5 years or like a bunch of great credit stuff before you could ruin it again. So it's built and incented in the same way that a normal credit score is.
That's interesting. So then what happens in a scenario where, because I like thinking about fringe cases just so that I understand like the scope of the application of something like this. So what exactly are you tying to this DID from like a physical standpoint? Are we talking about like a physical driver's license, a physical passport? Like, what is being tied to this ID that allows you to know as a business, as a user myself, as a business owner, we're leveraging Quadrata. How do I know for sure that my users who have this passport, this digital passport, that they're actually human? Like, what's the technical connection between the body and the digital passport?
Yeah, so right now, the issuer that we have for DIDs has an onboarding flow that uses some third parties that go through that. You actually are looking at taking a selfie of that individual for live verification of humanity, and that's being tied to a government-issued document of like a passport, driver's license.
Okay.
A lot of jurisdictions have different types of government-issued documents that gets tied to that. So there is that tie to humanity right now going on.
Okay, that makes sense. So that means that in a fringe case, if someone was well equipped, they could just spin up a bunch of fake driver's license and fake passports and get these identities, these digital identities, right?
Well, sort of. So there's just there's the physical document aspect, but that actually has to also match a live selfie that's going on as well. So you can't, you then, have deepfake technology. You then have to have names and addresses and birthdays that also pass other like compliance checks and sanctions list reporting and watch lists. So, as we know out in the world, there are identity fakes, identity thefts, all that kind of stuff, but it is built in such a way to reduce that as much as possible with the idea of fully eliminating it. So, there are always going to be some edge cases, but the structure that we have with the issuers is like we do due diligence on them to make sure they're following great security practices, that they are using well-vetted vendors for all this kind of stuff, and using the same technology that banks are using as well. So, they're using similar vendors as if you're signing up to a bank, and they're doing their compliance checks. So all that kind of stuff is really like, industry leading compliance and document verification. Yeah,
that makes sense. I mean, as long as, the participants in this ecosystem are following just the standard protocol, there's not a whole lot you can do with people who are well equipped to like fake passports, even though, like you mentioned, we have deep fake technology. We're coming up with AI, really sophisticated artificial intelligence. And so I, as a business owner, I just like to understand the fringe cases, because as my players, are active in our game, I can start looking for some discrepancies in like the activities. Like all of a sudden there's a lot more activity than what should be. And I can sort of predict what our users are doing if, they happen to be involved in like this nefarious activity. I like thinking about these things because I can start understanding the scope of making sure that our users are actually like real people and not, trying to come up with like fake passports and like fake stuff, right? So yeah, that's a good sort of like thinking point for me, just to kind of figure out like what it takes for businesses to really take advantage of technologies like this.
I guess this is like something that will be over time. I think this sector of the identity has a lot of parallels between like maybe like smart contract auditing, where over time these auditors, they become much more, they build reputations themselves, right? Where you could rely on them. Yeah. And if a human is verified through a passport like Quadrata, as long as there's not too many exploiters over time, I'm sure you guys are heavy on that, like trying to find out who is figuring out ways to game the system. Because we know if any new technology, any new standard emerges, somehow somebody's going to try and exploit it, right? But over time, the most reputable providers will crack down on that stuff, right?
So that brings me to like my next thought on all this. What in Quadrata internally, how do you guys think of government adoption for stuff like this? Is this a consideration for you guys, or is this something like completely independent of like government adoption? Is that a consideration for you guys?
Yeah, so I mean, the government adoption thing is always an interesting topic because, as you know, they move a little bit slower than people who are,
startups,
boots on the ground, moving forward. So We definitely have that in mind and all that. So one of our advisors is Kristen Smith, who is on the Blockchain Association. So there's definitely like stuff that we have ties into, what is the government doing? What kind of lobbying efforts are happening around blockchain overall? And we do see digital identity on chain being a key to a lot of the other stuff that we want government regulations to like look forward to actually have decentralized networks, allow these things to work in ways that are both independent as well as linked to the traditional financial institutions. Blockchain in and of itself is never going to be fully separated, but it's never going to be fully joined up with those things. So the government adoption is a really key thing there. So, when we're looking at what the requirements for identity are, we are making sure that the data issuers, all those things are using, bank grade type vendors, bank grade data providers to make sure that things are going in the right direction and allowing us to queue as close to a government acceptable identity as well as a blockchain decentralized network acceptable identity. So we do think there is an overlap there. And it's not all transactions require some sort of government acceptable identity thing. Right. If you're going down to the corner store and buying alcohol, they're going to check your ID to see if you're over 21. That's the only check. They don't check compliance stuff. If you buy a stick of gum, you don't even do that. So there are transactions that don't require any sort of identity verification whatsoever. But there are transactions, if you are joining a lending pool that has institutional investors and they need to make sure that, their funds are not being mixed with somebody who does terrorist financing, then you're going to have heavier identity checks for those types of things. So it is really a spectrum, and we're adding, we have these data points that are allowing dApps to make that decision, as well as, dApps in different jurisdictions. They might make different decisions on the types of things that are acceptable. And then we're also adding more data points, as, you're talking about, it's going to get better over time of, what kind of data is available. So you look at DIDs and bots and there might be some edge cases where there's some stuff that sneaks through. Ideally, that's not the case. We're going to get better over time with that. We haven't seen anything of stuff sneaking through, but then there are other data points it's like AML score. So if these are bots that are involved in like a scam or money laundering, you can look at an AML risk score as well, which gets updated over time. And maybe it's like, okay, that DID is great, but their risk score is like a 7 out of 10. And that's not somebody that we want to deal with. So whether it's a bot or a human, you can be like, okay, that's not somebody that we want to have in our game because we're dealing with real financial instruments. So those are the types of things you can add together data points to basically create the picture that makes sense for your application.
I got so many questions. So
that's why we're here, dude.
Yeah. Okay, let's stick with AML. So I have a question on AML specifically, and then I have sort of an idea of why I brought up a government or institutional adoption. But as far as AML goes, do you guys do on-chain analytics to start connecting, for example, ETH addresses who somewhere down or upstream have committed some sort of money laundering and has sort of like a trickle-down effect where that money ends up touching this ETH address down the line, and that has a potential score of money laundering. So it would be kind of higher on the end. So is that the analytics that you guys perform as far as AML, or is that a third-party service?
So that's a third-party service, but that's basically what we are trying to enable and allow the AML score to reflect those types of analytics. So it is true that different companies are looking at, and different compliance departments at dApps or organizations view compliance in slightly different ways. And so that allows for different third-party vendors to basically provide that type of information. But yes, we are looking at the trickle down, something started here and it moves and it moves and it moves. And this is associated with money laundering. Yeah, that's going to be a higher risk score for this end account that comes through. So, the way that hits our AML score is basically we've got some thresholding, we've got some other stuff coming in. So we're the issuer that's doing that has continuous monitoring. So they're getting updates daily from those third-party analytics providers. ingesting that and then spitting out what that means to our standardized AML score. So any issuer that comes in that issues an AML score on the Quadrata passport is going to be in a standardized rubric. So that way dApps can consume whichever issuer they want. Ideally, they're fungible, that any issuer means the same thing, but it's also, the dApp is like, I personally trust this issuer in particular. They can just take the score from that issuer.
Oh, I see. So that means that if my dApp has a bunch of a user base with a bunch of these digital passports, and my user base, I guess I service my user base as long as their AML score is 5 and below. That's how it would work, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if anyone breaches goes above 5, then you can't use my dApp, basically.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of flexibility within that too. So it's not just you can or can't use my dApp. It might be that a score of 5 means like, okay, you can't create new positions in my dApp, but your money is not frozen because you don't have a legal obligation to freeze those funds. So that might be something that's like, hey, we don't want you here. You can't get any new rewards. You can't do anything, but you can withdraw your money at a 5. But at a 9, you're like, well, your money, like, you can only withdraw a certain amount or whatever. Or at a 10, you're like, oh, I can't deal with sanctioned individuals. Like, we're going to totally lock you out of everything. So it allows for flexibility of what your dApp actually requires. So for a game, it might be like, hey, yeah, we can tell you're not a bot. You can play our game, but you can't actually get any rewards in there. Like, you add to the community and like as a game player, but like you can't financially interact with the game at a higher score.
Interesting.
But it might be at a lower score, you can do that, but then get the reward as well. So it allows you to tailor the experience to what your compliance requirements are.
That makes sense because everything is going to be a spectrum. And so say, for example, my player base is, for example, a logic would be that, hey, you've earned about $1,000. Now you need to send us your picture, and now you need to take a picture and like turn on your camera and do all these sorts of things in order to extract those funds into your wallet or claim those funds. So it gives us the flexibility to kind of create that logic based on the rules of like the regulation, like you're saying, of the country that we're in, right? So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So
how many countries are actually, I guess, onboarded or in because
I would have to double check. The last time I had, we had passports in over 50 countries.
Okay.
I don't remember. I don't want to say something that's untrue. I know it's higher than that, but at least 50. I haven't double checked lately, but it's available in, I think, over 100, but not every country or not every individual has signed up for a Quadrata passport yet.
Yeah.
So how do you guys determine the differences? Like, let's go back to the situation that happened with Tornado Cash. So Tornado Cash is supposed to be a privacy protocol, but of course anybody can use it for anything as far as like money laundering as well. So do you guys have specific analytics for, let's say the government says these ETH addresses came from North Korea? Like these ETH addresses are on the OFAC list, right? Nobody can do business with them. But what about the ETH addresses that used, privacy, right? Use Tornado Cash for privacy. Is that something that we can get granular and start figuring, like we get a dashboard of information of this stuff, or is it just the numeric number that we receive as far as like a business user, a business owner of using this protocol? Like how do we get that feedback of these ETH addresses are good and those are not?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things with Tornado Cash as an OFAC sanction thing is really on the business end, you don't have the decision. You always have a decision, but all of the stuff that came through is sanctioned. So even if they're like a good person that was using it for privacy, or somebody who's doing North Korea and terrorist financing stuff, unfortunately, the government did not make that distinction. So while that would be really great for the case, that is not the case of how that actually has turned out. And I know that there are suits against that going on right now, which hopefully will be resolved to be more of like, oh, these entities are sanctioned, not this software is sanctioned. But as of now, those are basically going to turn into a score of 10. So that is, somebody who has ETH that came from the Tornado Cash stuff. That's above a certain threshold. So one of the things that we have right now is like kind of those dusting level attacks that are like a very small or like infinitesimal percentage of somebody's wallet. You're not actually dealing with laundered stuff coming through Tornado Cash. But anything that is of like any sort of substance, that's tagged as a 10. So you as a dApp, when you're looking at the Quadrata passport, you will see a 10, you will see a sanctioned address. If you so choose as a dApp, as you can do, because that's what you're doing, you're running your own business, and you want to specifically allow particular addresses that you're like, well, I'm going to take the compliance risk on that they were not doing sanctioned stuff. You can then, you have your Quadrata passport integration that you're checking stuff, but you can always in your smart contract, as you control it, do things for particular addresses. So you can say, hey, like I've talked to this address, like I'm going to, before it goes, like it's like basically if this address, don't look at the Quadrata passport because I'm going to approve them. If any other address, go through the Quadrata passport process. So we're not dictating what apps do. We don't think dApps should work with sanctioned entities or deal with that kind of stuff. I mean, that's just from our compliance side. But yeah, it's really up to the dApps themselves to decide what fits their need and their jurisdictions.
Is there sort of like a rubric of what a 10 means? Does a 10 automatically mean it's like associated with North Korea and like Tornado Cash? Or is there some sort of interface where I can see like, hey, everybody in my dApp is a 10? You know, it's like,
or what if somebody,
what does that mean?
What if some event outside of, I guess, the scope of what the dApp is monitoring, some participants within the ecosystem, I guess the scores continually fluctuate? Or does it, you know, over time, like some event happens and somebody gets a 10 because they've been associated to
using Tornado Cash. Like,
does Quadrata, I guess, notify the dApp in any way? Like, you know, one of these users who has a passport with you guys, by the way, in case you know, they've been, I guess, associated to some sort of
overnight. Do all my users become a 10 because they happen to touch Tornado Cash? Like, is that how it works?
Could happen, right? Yeah. How would we know?
Yeah, basically. So to answer the first part of the question, there is a rubric that's available. So we have a risk score matrix that's available in our documentation that lines up basically what each score means. And a 10 is a sanctioned entity. So basically at a 10, you know it's somebody that is sanctioned on an OFAC list, like somebody you should not be dealing with. But yes, the scores vary over time. So this is something that happened with Tornado Cash, that they were suddenly sanctioned. Which means that the data providers that are doing on-chain analytics implemented that. And so that then cascades through the whole system and ends up in our risk score. So yeah, you could overnight, if all your users were Tornado Cash users, then they could all go to a 10 overnight. So there's definitely the continuous monitoring aspect, which is really important for dApps. Like you need to make sure that happens. And that's all on-chain and in your smart contract level. So you as a dApp don't need to get informed and like then change your smart contract. It's already set up to deal with people who are at a score 10. However, you need that to happen.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's auto magic.
Do we set those parameters, I guess, as an onboarding process as a dApp? Like or is standardized across the board, you know, like a spectrum of
it sounds like we set those parameters because we can opt to deal and work with people with a 10, but we take the risk, right? So but it's totally up to us.
So we customize our own smart contract for this. Okay, interesting. That's fantastic.
So I wanted to get to an idea. So it's not really so much an idea because I think you guys have thought about this before. But when going back to the government and their adoption of this, so when it comes to AML and all this stuff, you have to submit pictures, passports, driver's license, and then sometimes you have to turn on your camera and look left and right and all this crazy stuff. So when it comes to government adoption, there's an entity, a third party who's holding all these images and pictures, right? And what I was thinking, and I know you guys thought about this because it's not a stretch, but what I was thinking is, even if that database gets compromised, which as we've seen it throughout history, databases have been compromised, right? It's not Quadrata's fault. It's nobody's fault. It's just how things work, right? The database gets compromised. It exposes everybody's driver's license and passports and all this stuff. What I was thinking when it comes to the government, I was like, what if it didn't matter that all these images and your personally identifiable information got compromised? If the government recognized that those pictures are associated to a private key, right, your MetaMask, and in order to use those pictures, in order to get a loan for a car, you had to sign a transaction that's associated with those images. Mm-hmm. Like if you had a Quadrata passport, you had to sign a transaction to for the government to recognize that you actually are the identity holder and not the hacker, because the hacker has your images. They've stolen your identity, but they don't have your private key. Have you guys thought about implementing something like that?
Yeah, I mean, that's 100% the case, that private key thing. So hopefully your individual wallet isn't compromised along with your pictures and all of that. So this is one of the things that I think is really interesting with these digital identities and blockchain is the standard of being able to be like, okay, I can prove that I am who I am because I have access to this private key. So that doesn't necessarily correlate to you being who you are, because somebody could have compromised your address. You could have shared that private key.
True.
Quantum computing could come along and break some, encryption algorithms. There's a bunch of stuff. So that in and of itself isn't quite sufficient, but also the documents themselves aren't sufficient, as you mentioned. Just because I have your passport doesn't mean that I am you. Mm-hmm. I can't actually represent all of that kind of stuff. The combination makes it a little bit more secure. So this is going into two-factor authentication types of modes.
Right.
And I feel like there's going to be long-term some of this multi-factor authentication of you are who you are for being able to actually accomplish something. I think blockchain is really allows that to be the case. You can have private keys that are self-custodied. You can have private keys or multi-sigs that are, associated with an exchange or a different wallet or another service to go through. There's something maybe on the government side that you can prove. You have these documents that can go and all this. So I think you get into a lot of this multi-factor authentication, which I think is really, really cool. And, going towards government adoption long term, you're seeing some more of this happen in small ways. So Estonia, they have their EID thing, which I can't remember the name of specifically, but you can sign government documents using a digital identity rather than, just signing in and being like, yeah, that's my name. That's who I am.
Yeah.
So that's a really interesting aspect. What is hard on the other side of that, especially dealing with private keys, is what happens if you get locked out of your own identity. If you lose a private key, if you don't have access, which is why I think this multi-factor authentication and being able to kind of reassemble is going to be really important over time. And that the user experience of digital identity is really, really important over time, because you have to be able to self-custody or manage somewhere how your identity is being used. I mean, we see this happening now where somebody's identity is stolen, AKA a bank did not go through proper fraud checks and gave a loan to somebody that's not you. That's, for my personal thing, that's the bank's fault. That's not your fault.
Right. Agreed.
But if that's happening on chain and somebody can represent in a multi-factored way and they're like, oh, well, no, that's provably you, that's a bad thing. Or if you get locked out and you're like, I can't prove I am me anymore and get locked out, that's also a bad thing. So there are these considerations of we're taking small steps now to go in a direction that's hopefully not a dystopian future where it's because working for 99.99% of people still means that 1 out of every 10,000 it doesn't work for, and that's a lot of people in the world. So it's one of those things too. I don't believe that the digital identity stuff is necessary for every transaction, because if you do that and you hit those edge cases, then that means there are some people that are locked out of the system entirely, and we don't want that. So there's definitely a balancing act, and as the user experience gets there, as blockchain is underlining more technologies, I feel like it's going to be there, and there will be some government adoption eventually of it. But I feel like it's almost harder for the government to adopt it, where it's some of its citizenry can't access the system. I feel like it's a bigger deal than some of the citizenry not being able to access, some particular private company or some decentralized protocol. So I think you got to be really, really cautious on there's government embrace and then there's government requirement. And I think that we want to get towards the embracing, but not necessarily the requirement stage yet.
That's interesting. So how much of that plays into designing products for you guys internally? do you guys design products? I guess I'm answering my own question. So I'm assuming you guys design products for like the problems that exist today, but not necessarily for a government solution that they should adopt because it's better and a lot easier for, having access to a loan without having to physically show up to a bank. Because obviously if you've stolen someone's identity, you have their passport and driver's license, and you go to the bank to try to get out a loan using this information, they're not going to give it to you because you don't look like the guy, right? But what if you didn't have to go to the bank and you wanted to get a loan for whatever reason? You were able to sign a transaction where it's like it's government recognized, but you didn't have to like physically go anywhere, and you can get your money like relatively sooner than rather than just showing up and getting a loan. So how much goes into the idea of like coming up with products that service like the existing problems today versus like overall bigger solutions? Because when it comes to like government adopting like private keys and all that, I feel like they're like 15 years behind.
Yeah. So yeah, we definitely have that in mind. We're like cognizant of it at all of our product decisions. Our target right now, to be honest, is solving the products of today that we can get adoption on, because digital identity is still fairly nascent. Like, we're still building all of this kind of stuff out, and you need to have use cases, you need to have people using it. And that often kind of drives the government adoption of technologies. Like seeing stuff out there being like, okay, they're more reactionary than they are proactive. So you've got to be able to get it out there. But there are things that we know in some of our product design stuff that's like, this will probably not scale to all 8 billion people on Earth, or this will not scale to every single person in the United States. Like, you're not going to expect right now, like, a 6-month-old baby to manage their own private key to like proof of humanity if they need like on a tax form to show that they are dependent of somebody else for taxes. Like, that's not going to happen right now. That's probably not going to happen for a while. So we're not trying to solve for that case, but it's like in the back of your mind, like, okay, as we make these applications, how applicable is it to the general populace of the community that we're in, as well as the jurisdictions that we're hoping to work in? And yeah, the answer is you can't solve it all now. So we're trying to make progress with things that are out in the market. Like, we've seen need for the DID for like metaverse and gaming, as well as loan origination. You don't want to be having a person apply for different loans from the same entity, but like with a bunch of different wallets. Like, that's not great. You need to know the DID stuff. The AML risk score, like, that's a big thing on the compliance side. It's not possible. It wasn't possible on chain until recently. So those are things that we're seeing the necessity of for protocols, private companies, all that kind of stuff. But like the government stuff, it's there in our mind, but it's not something that we're actually building towards at the moment.
Is there any consideration about like I guess there's some proof of humanity protocols emerging within the Web3 space? I think that's independent of any real world verification processes. Is more like, I guess, peer-to-peer attestations, I guess, to verify that you're actually somebody who's human,
actually
right?
Real. Yeah.
Do you think that's like a competing sector against what it is you guys are trying to do? Or maybe this is just another factor that can be implemented as part of your Quadrata identification? Yeah, is this something of consideration or not?
Yeah, I think those things are really cool. I think it's solving a similar problem in a different way, but has slightly different applications to it. I don't see it as a competing product per se. Of proof of humanity, is something that like can happen in a multitude of different ways. It's something that could be incorporated into the Quadrata passport in the future, of like these peer-to-peer attestations going on, which I think would be really interesting. So yeah, I think it's great. I think that they're like, the more people that we have working on these solutions, the better these solutions are eventually going to be. And so that's one of the reasons that the Quadrata passport is not in and of itself a standard. We are trying to standardize some things. And so if there's a better thing that comes out, it's like, great, like, let's see how we can adopt that. Let's see how we can standardize that and make it useful to all the applications that are using the Quadrata passport or that would want to use a Quadrata passport. So we're very much like a lot of, we're not going to think of all of the best solutions. We've got a great team. Everybody's good, intelligent, thinking a lot of stuff, but like, more people are going to come up with more and better solutions than, some of the stuff that we have. And like, let's incorporate that. That's why we're adding data points. We're adding all that kind of stuff. And we got a really good proof of humanity that's coming in. That's like, hey, we've got something that works. It's like, great. Like, let's throw that in, see what happens, see how the dApps can use it to be able to do a different sort of decentralized identifier. And, that allows something that doesn't, because our DID right now requires going through a KYC process. Mm-hmm. Like, you have to confirm that, you match the government ID, that you have this name, that you have this birthday, all that kind of stuff. Whereas the other proof of humanity things like don't require that. Yeah. And that's a really interesting thing. Like, you might not need things that have KYC to do certain sort of types of transactions.
Yeah. Do you feel like you might receive some resistance from the Web3 ethos of trying to remain anonymous? Like, is there a place for anonymous interactions in the Web3 space? Or do you think, like, in the long term, like, everyone's going to have a digital identity?
I mean, I think there's a place for anonymous transactions. I definitely believe that. There is pushback. I mean, as there should be, when you're trying to come up with new identity stuff, there should be pushback. There should be all this kind of stuff. So the way that we are managing this right now is like, and it's part of our values that, we're trying to do Web3 identities in a privacy preserving way. Privacy preserving is slightly different than anonymity. But we are trying to not publish any sort of PII, which is like both an individual segment of PII, as well as being aware of combined factors that can still be traced back to an individual, where like each individual thing, like you couldn't necessarily like say, hey, that's Steve over here. But with a combination of factors, you can like, figure out who they are. So we're trying to do this in as a privacy preserving way as possible. But I do think that there are spaces for anonymous transactions in DeFi. And so like, it's as you said earlier on, like it's a spectrum of what is actually required. And, we hope that people that require being at this end of the spectrum, that we have a solution for them. Yeah. If they require being at that end of the spectrum, like this is not the solution for you. Like if you want to be totally anonymous, you shouldn't have a Quadrata passport. Unfortunately, there are those things that link together, if you're on the chains, but that's a very difficult problem to solve because things are out there forever in history, unless you're using like a privacy chain like Zcash or Monero or something like that.
Wow. So that brings up to the next question. So is privacy preserving down to, let's say, could you build something like this on Zcash? Is that even a possibility where the data that gets implemented within Zcash remains anonymous, but you as a dApp provider that that the people leveraging this protocol, I know that they're human, but I don't know who they are.
Yeah, I don't know Zcash well enough to know if that's the case, but I feel like that's a really good application of it. There are probably ways to do that under specific protocols, and if not, there will be in the future. I think that being able to basically have some sort of like auditable check that you did perform some sort of AML screening against the people that are using your protocol, but you don't necessarily know who they are or what they did. That sounds great to me. I would love to see that implemented somewhere. I haven't seen it yet. But yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah, because it's like, and I'm also thinking about sort of your third-party service providers too, because if they're holding a bunch of personally identifiable information, but if they hold it in a way where even if the FBI came to like query is like, who really owns this ETH address? I need to see their information. There's nothing that the service provider could give the FBI to like crack the encryption to show that, encrypted file, right? But I guess with regulations, they might have to give that information up, but who knows? If you implement it in a way where there's just nothing I can do, like as a service, holding this data, there's nothing I can do, FBI, to give you this information because I don't have the private key. Yeah, I just can't. I could give you the encrypted database, but it's going to take you, 1,000 years to crack it. But maybe FBI could crack it. They've cracked a bunch of stuff before. All right, so what about just kind of going through the questions here? Let's see. So what do you think decentralized identity could enable like the DeFi ecosystem to like flourish. Is that like one of the missing pieces with DeFi, or does decentralized identity just give more credence, more impact to what DeFi ecosystem is doing, and as far as like being recognized as a financial sector in the economy?
Yeah, and I guess because we've talked about, there's probably going to be like two classes now within the Web3 ecosystem at some point. I mean, it kind of already is. Predominantly over time, like in the past, the ethos was much more leaning towards decentralization. I think nowadays, I think the sector, the space, and the users themselves were kind of like almost begging for regulation at this point.
Yeah.
For many reasons, you know, everybody's kind of like waiting for the day where institutions feel comfortable, you know, dabbling in the space and, like you're saying, actually being participants in things like providing liquidity or whatever. But they need these primitives to kind of roll out first, right?
Yeah.
So there could be a future where there's one much more like institutionally backed DeFi ecosystem, and then one that's a little more
fringe
security or you know, what's it called, privacy enabled, stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know?
Maybe you're right. There might be two sectors of DeFi. It's like one sector of DeFi follows like the regulation, OFAC, all that stuff, and then another sector is like we believe in like complete anonymous, like decentralized finance.
Yes, because part of the mission behind DeFi, right, is to give access to financial services to a large segment of humanity who doesn't even have any real institutional ties, right? Yeah. The unbanked.
So I feel like in that scenario, you might come into the situation that Tornado Cash went into. Mm-hmm. They just created a privacy protocol that was used nefariously, and all of a sudden, like OFAC basically shut them down, right? You can still access it, but you know, from a large standpoint, it's not a good project anymore. And so if you're creating a DeFi protocol that doesn't have all these like decentralized identity checks, then OFAC could be like, well, you can't use this because there's no way of knowing anything about what anyone's doing.
Yeah. So
that's the risk, I guess.
Yeah. So I guess the ultimate question is, basically, like, what do you envision, I guess, the actual adoption, like the consensus outcome to, you know, the industry picking, I guess, what every DeFi protocol will eventually, I guess, utilize in the same way we all kind of rely on MetaMask as our standard wallet provider, right? What is the process that you guys think the industry or the sector will come to that consensus?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really interesting question of, you know, what does the future hold for DeFi, especially around digital identity? I see multiple players in the space. And I think that kind of addresses some of the spectrum issues of being like, this is like an institutional, like real buttoned up, and then this is like a more anonymous, you know, thing. I think there's also stuff in the middle of like, this is like a semi-known thing. You know, you're talking about that proof of humanity, those other types of protocols going in that aren't necessarily KYC. I think that there are room for stuff like that, or specific attributes or something to be in that in-between space as well. So I don't think it's an all or nothing. But yeah, I mean, so there's like the known stuff that we know of. Institutions need compliance protections for them to deploy more capital on chain. So even the institutions are within a spectrum. There are hedge funds that are already, you know, in DeFi protocols, and they're like, cool, we're doing this. But, you know, some banks are not allowed to do that, or there's a hedge fund whose compliance department is a little bit more strict. Like, we're not going to take on that kind of regulatory risk. So that's already a spectrum there. We see that with digital identity. That's a known thing that can happen. It's a known thing in metaverse to have like some proof of humanity, DID stuff, to make these games not have bots in them, or to be able to like allow those systems to be a little bit better. Those are known things. A lot of unknown stuff out there too. Like, we can't foresee all of the use cases for digital identity. You know, there's the compliance stuff. There's risk stuff with credit score, those types of things. There's also social stuff, which, you know, people are already using various NFTs to be part of different Discord channels through verification, or all of that kind of stuff. Like, that's already happening with some digital identity stuff. And I don't really know exactly how that's going to proliferate. So that's one of the things that we're looking at our designs, like, okay, we're solving known problems. But then people are going to come to us with unknown applications and be like, hey, can you solve this problem? And so that's one of the things that we don't think there's a set of data points that's known that like this is your digital identity. That can't be the case because society is going to change, blockchain is going to change, government regulations are going to change. So we're trying to be adaptable to be able to move forward into that future where like it's, you know, that kind of little hazy thing. We haven't explored those areas yet. We don't know what the terrain looks like. But I find it really fascinating. I think that's why it's going to be a really engaging space for quite some time, because as you get more to those edges of what digital identity can do, it's going to open up new space and new vistas. And you're like, wait, actually, we can do this now. That was something like, there's going to be stuff that we couldn't conceive of right now in designing digital identities that are going to be used in the future. And I don't know what those are, but I'm excited to find out. And hopefully they're not too dystopian. That's basically the thing that, you know, trying to not do is like build the horrible dystopian future.
Yeah, we deal with the same thing with the metaverse. You know, now with Mark Zuckerberg changing Facebook to Meta, all of a sudden there was a huge interest in the metaverse. And a lot of the detractors were saying is like, if we spend more time on, you know, the digital space, it's going to be a dystopian future. And we really don't see it that way. We feel like there's a large part of humanity that doesn't have opportunities that other parts of humanity have, only because they randomly were born in a different country, right? And so I think with the metaverse, they'll be able to have access to economic opportunities that they otherwise wouldn't have because they live, you know, in just like a third world country. Yeah. And so we see a lot less dystopian as far as like the metaverse goes, and we see a lot more opportunity. And I think you guys like have like the same sort of dynamic with decentralized identity. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting how like all these things are sort of converging. So let's talk.
Yeah, we see a ton of opportunity and are super optimistic. I don't want to bring dystopian up stuff too much, but we got to keep that in the back of our head, like not building it. But yeah, like we're building because we see opportunity. We're not building just to avoid dystopia.
Yeah. That's funny because so let's talk a little bit about the metaverse. So not to plug what we're doing, but we have a project that's building a platform for developers and creators to make content for the metaverse. And part of that construction we have creators like us included who are leveraging the platform to create distributed ecosystems. So think of a game that instead of going to a single location to play that game in the metaverse, it's a game that's widely distributed to a community where that community is hosting the game on their own land. So pieces of the game are being hosted. So in our ecosystem, we have players who are traveling through different parts of the metaverse and accessing different parts of the game to progress in that game. So one of the things that we're seeing that decentralized identity solves is the fact that with decentralized identity, we know that the players who are not only hosting the game, but, you know, interacting with the different game components, that they're all people, right? And they're not bots, because the implication is that once this ERC20 token is on chain, there's a lot of reasons to exploit that token. Yeah, right?
or to not recontribute it, I guess, within the ecosystem itself. So I think that over time we're starting to see that these are some of the native flaws in a lot of the play and earn mechanisms, or just any kind of like activity to earn ecosystem. So. And as a result, it just does tend to attract a demographic where, you know, if you understand, I guess, like the hierarchical needs of an individual human.
Yeah, Maslow's hierarchy.
In most cases, you know, these participants who have the financial motive to you know, contribute, they're going to take the route to which, you know, isn't a favorable one to the longevity, the sustainability of an economy, really.
Yeah.
So, and it only exacerbates that problem if the people they figure out a way to exploit that even further by, you know, injecting more and more non-human elements into that.
We've seen this like execute in real time.
Yeah, we have. And I'm not going to name names or anything, but it's out there and it's prevalent, and it is one of the dilemmas that exists in this space, right? And
so I feel like once the metaverse ecosystem matures and we start adopting things like decentralized identity, these problems will become less of a problem, because now participants of an ecosystem are verified humans.
Exactly.
And then it's up to the designers of games to come up with a sustainable ecosystem, not one that gets exploited.
Exactly. Yeah. Now you can address some of the other dilemmas that exist. Not, you know, as long as you know your ecosystem is true and honest, and there's nothing potentially like misrepresented, right? You know, by, you know, inflated
numbers,
metrics, I guess, that might paint an accurate picture of what the actual economy metrics are. I think over time that's going to attract even more like, real engaged ecosystem participants who will reinvest their time into the economy. And, because of that, you'll have more sustainable outcomes, right?
Yeah, and I feel like it's going to be more authentic too, because people participating, they know that we're all like together, right? They're all humans.
Yeah, at base, that would be good to know.
Yeah.
At base, like expectation when you're involved in some sort of virtual ecosystem, it'd be good to know everybody around me here is like, we're all have a physical body to ourselves, right? That'd be good.
I mean, I don't want to say, all humans, NPCs, always important parts of games, but that's part of the design rather than somebody that's doing an exploit.
Yeah.
And then there's a consideration of whenever AI does continue to mature, like at what point does AI and NPCs and factor in, like, will they at some point be considered as equal or almost as equal as like human contributors? And then, what does that mean?
What if digital AI NPCs are just sanctioned off from like getting access to decentralized identity?
Possible. Right? If they don't pass the Quadrata.
Yeah, that's true. They wouldn't pass, but man, I guess
maybe they could. They could figure out a way.
Yeah. They could just generate.
I don't know. We might have an attribute in the future that's an AI DID. So
that's true.
Exactly.
That it's like, this is a known AI. We'll see. Previous to Quadrata, I was actually at a chatbot company.
Oh, really?
Working on some of this stuff and looking into AI. Yeah. So it's a very interesting field, and like, a lot of people have very different opinions on how AI should be treated versus humans. Like, is it going to be on the same level? Is it going to be on separate levels? But it's the nice thing about adaptability is that if it gets to the point where AI is like actual AI and not a lot of this kind of like machine learning, distillation of human achievement, but is like actually making their own achievements, I feel like it's be an interesting prospect. But Quadrata Passport will be there for them in that future state.
That's awesome.
So what's your position? If we achieve general artificial intelligence, should we treat them with equal, respect as to other humans, or what do you think?
I mean, I think that general artificial intelligence is a really, really hard thing to define. If we throw that out and just be like, accept that, yes, they are like their own intelligent species thing. I mean, I think there's a lot of ethical, moral stuff that has to be thought out. It's like, it's very philosophical on that side. Like, we have, in my opinion, like, sentient other beings on this planet already that don't have equal stuff. I'm a meat eater. Like, I eat cows. Are cows sentient, intelligent beings? Probably yes. So, there are some things where like I'm utilizing cows in a way that I, don't and wouldn't with humans. That's a really awkward sentence to say. But I think that AI is going to run into some of those, same types of things, and that there probably like over time will be different ways that AI is treated. Like, we have better animal protections and rights than we did 100 years ago. Post artificial intelligence, I think that that's also going to be something that's a progression over time.
That's interesting.
You hear that, Will? No more bullying your AI.
Yeah, I was gonna say I would bully my AI.
Stop kicking your Roomba, dude.
Just to keep like the psychological differences between a dog, right? Because you wouldn't mistreat a dog.
Yeah.
Versus something that was like human generated.
Yeah.
Which I feel like we have to maintain that distinction. Otherwise,
I think innately
things get squirrely.
Innately, part of that is just built into us, like how we value things, especially.
Yeah.
I think we value humanity more than anything, as I think we should.
Yeah.
Right. Because there's certain properties and qualities, I guess, to our existence that I don't think AI can really ever replicate. You know, the fact that we all know we're going to die at some point. Will AI ever really get to that? I mean, can AI ever actually truly die? If that's not the case, then what is the value in preserving that?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So even if AI becomes an equal or greater than participant in any kind of ecosystem, whether it's the metaverse or anything that does produce value, how do we equally, redistribute, the rewards for that contribution, like, amongst humans and AIs? I don't know. It depends on how much affinity we build with them, I guess, over time. We might just fall in love with AI to the point where, like, you know what, dude? Yeah. Just give them everything. Take over.
Yeah, I'm gonna I'm gonna have to go back to school for my philosophy PhD to have a really true deep opinion on this.
Yeah.
So what's your take on all this AI stuff that's been happening, and how does it affect Quadrata? Like, do you guys are in consideration of like making adjustments as a result of like what's going on, or is AI not to the point where it's really affecting your business yet?
As of now, it's not really affecting our business. I think that there are probably more machine learning things that are going on, which is like these on-chain analytics stuff. That's how are wallets associated? How do you do groupings of transactions? All of that kind of stuff definitely impacts our AML risk score, stuff like that. There's probably some stuff that's happening on the on-chain analytics that could be titled AI by people in the industry. I'm not sure exactly where that distinction is, and so I'm not going to say that one company is doing AI and another's doing machine learning or whatever. So that's the impact that it has right now, but we're otherwise not really designing for it, other than being aware of like AI participants in metaverse eventually. Like, that's a thing that we're not trying to solve for now, but it's like, I would say that's like below the back of the mind. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. We know we can be flexible to do it. Like, we design with flexibility in mind. We just don't know how we'd actually solve it when it gets there.
Well, maybe instead of like trying to prevent others from using AI to like thwart your system, you guys could leverage AI to determine whether submissions have some sort of like bot mechanics to it, bot attacks. So maybe like implementing AI machine learning from your system's perspective would increase the quality of everything being submitted.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's the nice thing about the Quadrata passport not being a distinction in and of itself, but it leverages data providers and issuers and like tries to set a standardized system. So they can, with their third-party providers, upgrade their systems over time. Like, they can be like, hey, like, we're now detecting deep fakes on these selfies. Like, all of that is going to happen. And that basically gets automatically built into the Quadrata passport, because the issuers are making upgrades to their systems. They're keeping up with the technology, and we have continuous monitoring going on. It's like, hey, we see that this person is like actually fake. So like, that's not a real person anymore. We're going to like purge our attestations from the system. So it's it allows for that flexibility and allows to like grow with AI, grow with all of the new technologies that are coming up. So that's what I said with like designing for flexibility. We're not designing being like, this is the state of the world. This will be the state of the world in 5 years. This will be the state of the world in 10 years. We're solving problems now. We're solving them in a flexible, privacy-preserving manner. And those should be applicable to problems 5 years from now. And if they're not, we can adjust.
Yes, that makes sense. Yeah, because I feel like with everything that's going on with AI, I feel like every project is scrambling to figure out how to implement some sort of elements of AI into their project. And so I don't know. Are you picking that up too, or is that just our own like?
Oh yeah, there's all the trend. I mean, in the hype cycles of being like AI is big. Yeah. If you have AI in your product, then you can get more funding. I mean, this is the same thing when like Watson first came out too. Like they're like, oh, every AI and everything. Like, let's change AI to boost our stock price. Like, we saw that with crypto. Like, goes in cycles as well. So there's the hype site. There's the hype cycle to everything. I do think that AI is having, because of these new applications of like stable diffusion and like GPT-3 and like all that kind of stuff, is like, it's on its hype cycle, but it's a little bit farther along because these applications are more real and more accessible than they were before. And like, it'll probably build up and then it'll go back down. And same with like the crypto cycles. Like, you have the hype. Yeah. And then you have people build, and then you have the hype, and you have people build. I think AI is on like a similar type of fluctuation.
Yeah. Yeah. So when it comes to the cycles, we feel like the digital identity is going to be hot in the next cycle. Metaverse, AI. We feel like all these things are going to be like the most attractive investment opportunities, if you will.
Yeah, if anything is going to fuel or funnel like a DeFi 2.0 mania, it's got to be the identity and reputation. I think 100% standards have to exist, right? In order for new protocols to emerge, new products and services and offerings to become available, right? So I think that's where we're kind of anticipating. That's why it was so important to identify projects like you guys, because we kind of knew this was coming a while ago.
Yeah.
Well, we had difficulty figuring out, who's actually going to enable all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, are there any other projects you have in mind? You mentioned Cred as I think a partner of you guys, right? Who is focused on the reputation side and credit scoring on chain. Any other partners you guys are working with that are going to help?
Yeah, so we just had an announcement yesterday of 8 other, 9 total, including Cred, that are integrating with the Quadrata passport. So yeah, we're building stuff out. There's some metaverse stuff going on. There's some like ESG investment. There's adding liquidity. There's some unsecured lending. Like the applications for digital identity are huge. Yeah. So we've got partners that are going on in like very different spaces. And I think that's what's really amazing about what we have built is that it's applicable to a wide variety of dApps, and it's not not pigeonholed into like being like, hey, this is the one place that you can use this, or like here's a true false response to like, is this person compliant? Because that doesn't make sense for all the applications. So that's one of the things that like distinguishes us from like some of the other digital identity providers in this space. If they're solving a particular problem, often for themselves, which is a really great way to start, we're solving a problem for a lot of different dApps. So we're built to be utilized in different ways rather than like built for a specific purpose that might also be applicable to something else. But yeah, as I said, like it's heating up. There are a lot of other projects out there that are trying to solve some of this identity stuff. So yeah, come check out the Quadrata website. We'll be updating our partner list soon, but we've got TrueFi, Archblock, BSOS, Cello, CR, Chi, and Space, in addition to Cred, that we just announced. So they're all great projects to work with. They're all doing like really interesting stuff. So check it out.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I really appreciate your time, Travis. So this has been one of the more interesting, I guess, conversation we had, just because we've been thinking about this for a long time, and we've sort of known that our own project needs something like this.
Yeah.
And so we've come up with like different what are our requirements for like a decentralized identity that we need in order to make our project, much more improved, right? So I really appreciate your time, Travis. We definitely need to get you back on. I think we have more questions, I guess, that we want to cover, but definitely in another call. But yeah, Travis, I appreciate your time, man.
Yeah, happy to have that sales integration call.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
See if we actually solve your problems, as well as answering more questions about the general stuff of the space. And yeah, anybody else that's listening that needs an identity solution, like please reach out to Quadrata. We're happy to talk. We're very much hands-on in implementation right now, so we're trying to really help enable the early people in the space. So yeah, we're out there. We're doing it.
That's awesome. We're definitely going to stay in touch because this is something that we need. So we're going to stay in touch, and yeah. Hopefully you enjoyed the conversation. I feel like
this was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I feel like we bring a little bit different angle, but yeah, thank you for coming on, and we will catch you, I guess, in another call, man.
Great, thank you so much. You guys have a wonderful time. Thanks again for having me on.